Today, I'm creating the strongest Bleach character that quite literally can break the entire verse. Someone so strong that a character like Yhwach with all of his broken abilities wouldn't stand a chance. Not only that, if all the Shinigami, all the Quincy, all the Arrancar, and heck, all the Hollows in existence were assembled like the Avengers against this character, they would all beat their maker 3 times over. And just like my My Hero Academia video, we have some rules that we need to follow when making our character. First, the way we make him has to abide by some of the rules of the animeverse, meaning that he can't have every known Bankai and Zanpakuto, because that would just be boring. Second, he can only have one of the following 9 categories: Zanpakuto, race, spiritual power and spiritual pressure, swordsmanship, speed, strength, durability, Bankai, and intelligence. Third, we can only take one category from a character, so we can't put Ichigo or Yhwach in every single one. And lastly, we can still take powers from other races as long as it's not Zanpakuto or Bankai, since they are directly related to the race of the character. Best of all, at the end of the video, I'll also be making the character I made fight 2 of the most overpowered characters in Bleach in one-on-one duels to the death to see just how strong he really is. And I don't want to call him this character anymore though. So that's why I gave him the name Raz, because Ichigo in English is strawberry, and the closest fruit to that is a raspberry. Now to start things off, I want to first talk about his race. In Bleach, there are a total of 17 races, from humans to Quincy's to Hollows, and even some relatively unknown ones like the Gikon, which are just souls that are being mass-produced by the Shinigami. And even some that we can't choose, like the transcendent beings, which include the Soul King. My top 3 choices would be the Arrancar, Quincy's, and Shinigami. Out of these 3, I'd have to eliminate the Quincy's first, because even though the most OP characters in the series are Quincy's, all of them had shrifts. Basically, when a Quincy becomes a Stern Ritter, they have to drink a cup of Yhwach's blood, which grants them powers straight out of Yhwach. Since we're lone wolves that don't want to be under anyone, we're not going to get a shrift anytime soon. Also, just look at what happened when Yhwach took their abilities away. That leaves us with the Arrancar and the Shinigami. Now, a base Arrancar is stronger than a base Shinigami, but because Shinigami just have more potential for growth than Arrancars through training, it seems like they're the logical choice, right? Well, I want to introduce to you a very special kind of Arrancar called the Vasto Lorde. And one character that came from that race is Urukiora, and you know how strong he is. It's hypothesized that Vasto Lorde, once turned into a Arrancar, is on par or even above the Gote 13. But there's one downside to this. We can't have Bankai because we're not Shinigami. I know, it sucks, but we have our own version of Bankai called Resurrection, which is practically still Bankai, but for Arrancars. I might even argue that it could be better for some situations, and you'll know why later. So for our race, I choose Shinigami. I got you in the first half, didn't I? This then leads me to choose our Zanpakuto. Now, there are literally countless choices for our Zanpakuto, and it might be one of the hardest choices I'll make from this video. Our best contenders are, of course, Ichigo's Zangetsu, Senjumaru's Shigarami, Yamamoto's Ryujin Jaka, Ichibe's Ichimonji, and Aizen's Kyokai Suigetsu. Out of all of those 5, Ichimonji might be the coolest in my opinion. It was the first ever Zanpakuto, and what it does is basically erase the name of any entity its ink touches. With this, Ichibe can change the properties and abilities of his targets depending on the name he grants or erases from them. The hard part about this is that we need to be in close contact with the enemy, and someone like Yhwach was able to easily bypass its effects. That leads me to choose the Zanpakuto that's just going to have the most firepower. And when I say firepower, I literally mean firepower. We have to go with Yamamoto's Ryujin Jaka, because, well, bro could incinerate every single living and non-living thing just by waving his sword when he activates his Shikai. Not only that, the flames are so hot that when he uses an ability called Inetsu Jigoku, those flame pillars can turn almost anyone into ashes, including Yamamoto himself. Sometimes they say that the simpler the better. And what's simpler than just burning everything to the ground? And this is where things get even more interesting. As I've said before, we can't take 2 characteristics from a character we've already chosen, meaning that Yamamoto's Bankai is off the table. I know it sounds weird that a Zanpakuto's Shikai and Bankai are different, but hear me out. A Bankai is basically just an upgraded version of a Zanpakuto and its Shikai. Also, I put in a little loophole in the rules so I can make this video interesting. In my first rule, I explicitly mentioned the word some, meaning that we don't really need to abide by all the laws in Bleach, just the ones that would stop us from abusing our freedom. And in my opinion, having a different Bankai for a Zanpakuto is not necessarily that OP. But hey, leave a comment on what you think. Is this acceptable or not? Let me know your thoughts. Anyway, moving on, I have the perfect Bankai for Raz. You might be thinking that Ichigo's Bankai would be the best for him, considering that not only do we get an enhanced Getsuga Tensho, but after we pair it up with our Zanpakuto, we can add a flaming effect to it. The only thing is that we don't know of its true power, and it might be that Tensa Zangetsu was only strong due to Ichigo's other abilities like Holification, him being part Quincy, and so on. It also doesn't help that, other than Getsuga Tensho and a boost in our stats, Tensa Zangetsu offers almost nothing else to help Raz win fights. This is why I'll be choosing Urahara's Kanonbiraki Benihime Aratame. Why? Well, it's one of the most versatile Bankai out there. It can be used offensively and for support. What it does is that it can restructure anything it touches. So we can make ourselves stronger, heal ourselves, deconstruct our enemies, and so much more. It's just the perfect Bankai for us, especially since we're gonna take the next category from one of the most powerful characters in the series. When you see the word intelligence, you already know who I'm gonna pick, and it's of course, Aizen. There's no one better for this, because he is quite literally not only the smartest character in Bleach, but in the entirety of anime. He was so smart that he created hollows and a Rancor behind the Gotenks 13's back, and even manipulated the entire Soul Society so he could invade the Soul King Palace. He is the GOAT when it comes to intelligence in the series, and this is because of his mastery and knowledge when it comes to Hokyoku. And since we are as smart as him, we can do what he did. We'll fuse 2 Hokyoku together and insert it into our own body. This allows us to transform like Aizen did when he fought Ichigo, and it also gives us high-speed regeneration, just like the Hollows. This is also the reason why Yhwach considers Aizen as a threat, as he is currently invincible. Even if we don't accomplish that part, just having Aizen's IQ is enough to give us a massive advantage in battles. I'm so smart that Harvard has to take a test made by me. Now that we've covered race, Zanpakuto, Bankai, and intelligence, it's time to find a character that we can get our spiritual power and pressure from. In the series, the one character that's known to have the most spiritual power and pressure is Yhwach, but I bet only true fans know that there's another character that has so much spiritual power and pressure that it's basically not even comprehensible by the human mind, and it's none other than the Soul King himself. Yup, I bet you never saw that coming. If you didn't know by now, Yhwach is the son of the Soul King, and since he's basically a god, he has almost infinite spiritual power and pressure reserves, but the Soul King is just quite literally built different. With this amount of spiritual power and pressure, Raz just ascended to godhood. We have full access to any type of Kido spell because of our IQ, and have infinite access to our abilities of our Zanpakuto and Bankai. Not to mention, we can boost our physical stats like defense and attack power to a level that's just unheard of, possibly even surpassing Yhwach's base stats. Just imagine how strong we would be, because even the royal guards needed to sacrifice 3 members just to allow Senjumaru to reach her full potential due to their seal. It was said that if all the seals were not there, they would destabilize all of Soul Society, the Hueco Mundo, and the human world. This means that our presence alone would shake the very foundation of the world of Bleach, and the only ones that could even come near us are those that are captain level or higher. And because we've talked about spiritual power and pressure, we next have to talk about speed. As you know, there's a skill that Shinigami use where they basically just move so fast that they cannot be perceived by the human eye, and it's called Ho-Ho. I know, I sound like Santa. Anyways, it's one of the most important and basic skills a Shinigami should learn, and then it could be further enhanced to become Shunpo or Flash Step. This is what our baddie Yoruichi specializes in, as she is called the Flash Goddess after being the fastest Shunpo user in Soul Society. That's a bit of a false claim since Aizen is clearly faster than her, but since we've already used him for our IQ, then Yoruichi is our best bet. This isn't a bad choice too, because Yoruichi is so fast that she can be in multiple locations at once, creating after images just because of how fast she can be. Not only that, she basically created an advanced Shunpo skill called Utsusemi, which allows us to move at speeds that make our after images look like they've already taken damage. Pair this up with our spiritual power and pressure plus our IQ, then we possibly can deceive and trick any opponent in our way, and possibly attack so fast that no one can block our Zanpakuto infused attacks. We now even have the ability to assassinate our opponents by just tapping them with our Zanpakuto, and then they just get engulfed in flames. Just imagine you're casually talking to your bro, and the next moment, he just self-combusts like he was in Fire Force. So if you don't want to get blitzed from a guy that's named from a raspberry, you should probably click that like button and subscribe. Moving on, we have 3 categories left, and that's swordsmanship, durability, and strength. I'm gonna leave durability and strength for last, which gives us swordsmanship next. Now, this is a pretty interesting category for Bleach, because not all characters use bladed weapons, but most of them do. And seeing as we do have Ryujin Jaka as our Zanpakuto, which is basically a standard katana when its true form is revealed. With this, swordsmanship is just as important because it lets us attack more proficiently. And just being an amazing swordsman is just cool. There's actually a fighting style for Zanpakuto, which is called Zanjutsu, and much like Ho-Ho, it's one of the 4 basic fighting styles for Shinigami. Because the world of Bleach is dominated by other abilities like Bankai, swordsmanship isn't being talked about much. But there's one character who, even without his Bankai, can actually fight like a monster. I mean, it's stated that her specialty is sword fighting, and that she's mastered an almost countless amount of swordsmanship styles, which is why people call her Yachiru, or 1,000 Styles. She's none other than Metsu Unohana, and even someone like Zaraki couldn't hold a candle to her while he was in his base form. It literally took Zaraki hundreds, if not thousands, of tries before he could win against Unohana. And since we're proficient in numerous styles of swordsmanship, our attack patterns are unpredictable to the point that no one will know how we're going to attack them. Add this up to our speed, IQ, and just the fact that our Zanpakuto is OP as hell, then we've easily become the best swordsman in all of Bleach. Our second to last category is durability. Now, the obvious choice here is Zaraki, because bro is just built like a tank. He even tanked one of Ichigo's Getsuga Tensho before. But we haven't picked Yhwach yet, and this is where he's going to shine. One of the many reasons why Yhwach was so dangerous is because of his ability called the Almighty. An interesting fact about the Almighty is that Yhwach inherited it from the Soul King, since he is the Soul King's son, and it was originally the Soul King's power. But since we have the spiritual pressure and power of the Soul King, it's actually viable for Raz to get this ability, meaning that not only are we immortal if we use Aizen's IQ to infuse ourselves with the Hokyoku, but we can also see all the possible futures and also alter it to whatever outcome we want. Raz is basically untouchable, and we don't have the weakness of Yhwach's version of the Almighty, because we don't have to switch with another person like Yhwach did with Yhwach. The Almighty is even better when used by us because of Aizen's IQ once again, since its future all-causality is only effective if we prepare countermeasures for our enemy's future movements, and we know Aizen is an expert in that. And if we somehow die, which wouldn't never happen, we can just rewrite our own death. And for our last category, we have strength, just pure physical strength. So without a doubt in my mind, it's going to be Zaraki. What is there to say? In his strongest form, he was able to hold back a stomp from Gerard Valkyrie, who grew to the point that Zaraki was only as tall as the soles of his feet. And he wasn't done there, as he threw Gerard as well in that same form. Zaraki can grab Ichigo's sword, launch men far away with one kick, and with his bare hands literally grabbed and threw a Cero from Neutra. His slashes, a skyscraper was torn apart after he just flicked his wrist. Even Grammy couldn't imagine anything that Zaraki couldn't cut. My man is a beast through and through. This is why I reserved Zaraki for this ability, because it serves as one of our greatest assets when it comes to increasing our offensive capabilities. So far, everything we've chosen was for survival or to take the enemy by surprise. But if everything else fails, Zaraki's strength and Unohana's swordsmanship will make anyone that stands in our way be nothing but a pile of meat and bones. There are reasons why he's part of the 5 special war powers, and the most obvious out of all of them is just how much of a monster he is when it comes to physical strength. Now, we've finished making Raz. He's a Shinigami with Yamamoto's Zanpakuto, Urahara's Bankai, Aizen's IQ, the Soul King's spiritual pressure and power, Yororichi's speed, Unohana's swordsmanship, Yhwach's durability, and Zaraki's strength. And have you wondered how he would fare against the 2 most overpowered characters in the series? Of course, the first character we're going to be fighting is none other than Ichigo himself. And keep in mind that we're also going to include a full-powered Ichigo with his true Tensa Zangetsu to give Raz a bit of a challenge. We wouldn't want to end the fight too quickly now. What happens here is that, of course, since we're not being hunted, we'll take our time and actually infuse ourselves with the Hokyoku. Not only that, we're going to launch a surprise attack, because why fight him head on when you can take him by surprise? I predict that Ichigo would instantly counter our attack, since we cannot fully hide our immense spiritual pressure. It would turn into a face-to-face duel, and this is where our true abilities shine. We'll immediately activate the Shikai of our Zanpakuto to deal some damage against Ichigo early on in the battle. Now, since Zangatsu is basically connected to Ichigo, it's safe to say that Ichigo has high-speed regeneration, which would mean this will become a drawn-out fight. The only way we can win this is that we deal so much damage that he can't heal himself. And that's where our Bankai comes in. Using Kanon Biraki Benihime Aratame on top of our Zanpakuto, we can continuously burn and dismantle Ichigo's entire being. Or better yet, we'll just break his Bankai the same way Yhwach did to him back in the 1000-year Blood War. If he manages to hit us with Getsuga Tensho, even an enhanced one, we have so many ways to get back into the fight. There's the Almighty, there's the Hokyoku, and we have our Bankai. Even if it does become a battle of attrition, Ichigo would most likely run out of spiritual power first because we have the Soul King's reserve. And you know why he was able to beat Yhwach? It was because he had some help. Now that he's alone, I don't think he can defeat us at all, much less make us bleed. Plot armor just doesn't work here because I'm writing the story. And the second character Raz is going to fight has to be Yhwach. This is where things get tricky because both of us have the Almighty, but what Yhwach doesn't have is again our IQ. Aizen just comes in clutch every single time. What we would do is fight Yhwach head on, and it would most likely be a stalemate with both Raz and Yhwach unable to die as they keep altering future after future after future. Raz would then retreat, which is weird, but hear me out. Now we know the full extent of Yhwach's abilities, and we can prepare for round 2. The way we think, it would take us some time, but eventually we will be able to find what we exactly need to beat him. Keep in mind that Hokyoku was Urahara's original creation, but Aizen managed to create his own version through trial and error experiments. In line with this, the only reason Ichigo was able to beat Yhwach was that Ishida shot him with a silver arrow that was coated with silver, formed from a victim's heart when swollen and combined with the victim's blood. This arrow stopped Yhwach the Almighty for a short while, and Ichigo used this opening to kill Yhwach. What's not to say that we don't figure this out too? I mean, Aizen manipulated the entirety of Soul Society, and we can take our time creating our own silver arrow. We're not heroes, and even if Yhwach destroys Soul Society, we don't really care. We just want to kill him. I mean, they don't even pay us to save them. When we do get that silver arrow, round 2 is going to be an overwhelming victory. Yoruichi's speed, we won't even need to shoot the arrow. We'll just stab Yhwach with it. But keep in mind, the author never really explained why Yhwach didn't rewrite the future where he was killed. A theory that comes from a redditor says that the arrow was covered by stillness, which is immune to Almighty. In any case, we just know it works. So once Yhwach's Almighty is gone, burning him with a Zanpakuto or slicing his head off should be no big deal. And it's a win for Raz. But why did I only choose Ichigo and Yhwach? Well, the others just don't stand a chance. Even someone like Aizen doesn't have the means to kill us and can't replicate the strategy we used on Yhwach. With all of that, we could single-handedly destroy the universe of Bleach if we wanted to, and no one would stand in our way. But what do you think? How would you create the strongest Bleach character of all time? Let me know in the comments. And if you like this video, be sure to check out this one where I create the strongest character in My Hero Academia's history.